Hello, my name is Jamie Sparling, and welcome to the FormABLE podcast. And I gotta be honest, when I first started this podcast, one of the things I wanted to do was say thank you to my teachers and to my friends and people that helped me along the way. My guest today is somebody that is exactly all of those things, and it is my honor to have Mr. Bill Miller, my yoga instructor, and so much more here on the FormABLE podcast. How's life treating you, Bill?
It's treating me well.
Yeah,
I'm a happy person.
that's important. That's important. I used to have a friend that said that, well, my life's treating me just about like I treat it. And I always liked that answer.
Well, the caveat, if you will, is that I'm a happy person, despite the fact that I'm dying from cancer.
Yeah,
And but no, life has been good, and people have been especially good to me over the last 3 years since my diagnosis, and I'm doing all right.
yeah. We got to hang out a little bit today, and you looked happy and enjoying your sandwich and everything. And I'm
Yeah.
super to have you on the show today. You have a really interesting story as far as what I know, right? Which is actually just a small portion, as I found out today. You
Yeah.
know, uh, I remember when I first was looking into yoga, it was through the martial arts, and you
Mhm.
had told me about how you had did martial arts and was a
Mhm.
police officer in the Milwaukee area, and didn't really think much of yoga or anything like that at the time. When
Yeah.
I met you, it was hard for me to even believe that because you were one of my yoga teachers and so deeply embedded in that culture in our area.
You know, well, my wife Susie is one of your students, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Susie who practically dragged me to my first yoga class, and that was probably 14, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't want to go. Guys don't do yoga, and I'm not flexible and so forth. And she said, well, just try it. So I sat up in back of the class, and the teacher, by the way, was Marisha Plattner, who has become a good friend. So I was back there hanging out, and there was a woman in front of me who later became a good friend, and she had just gotten her hair cut short, and she had two or three tattoos on the back of her neck. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Well, I'm just going to study her tattoos and pretend that I'm doing yoga. And but so so after a while, I thought this is this is having an effect on me. It has more of a calming effect. But I decided that I wanted something because my background had, uh, as I told you earlier today, I had done a lot of training and gone to a couple of schools on strength training and specifically testing police officers
Mm-hmm.
for fitness, and then depending on where they were at their fitness level, making recommendations for things that they could do differently. So that was so the physical aspect was really at that time what was drawing me into yoga. I found out that because I at the time I was fairly strong, I could do some of the postures, the yoga poses that a lot of people had difficulty doing,
Mm-hmm.
handstands, headstands, and what I now call acrobatic yoga, and it isn't really yoga; it's more performance. Some would debate that. You
Sure.
can't call it, but I do. Um, so so I went to a different teacher, and then I went to a third teacher, and then I was doing. So the third teacher was definitely right up my alley. And I remember one class that I went to. We had to do this thing, side plank. And in side plank, you're basically on your side and you're up on your arm, and then you so it's a balanced posture also. So if I'm lying on my right side and my body is extended, I would lift my left leg up and lift my left arm up. And there was a guy behind me. And so we were competitive. We didn't acknowledge it, but we were. And so we go into side plank, and I thought, I'm gonna beat him on this. And all of a sudden I hear this groan behind me. His shoulder gave out. And I really felt badly for the guy, but I said, yeah, I got him. And that was my attitude. It was a terrible attitude. And at some point, I began seeing things that I would do differently, and that was based on I had had a lot of training in anatomy and physiology to go along with the fitness testing, and at the same time, I was working for a bike shop here in Wausau, and they handle specialized bikes. And the owner of the bike shop sent me to Morgan Hills, California, to the specialized headquarters for a week to learn how to do bike fits. In other words, when a person comes in to buy a bike, making sure that there are things that are correct with them. So I learned a lot more about things like something called rotated pelvises and problems with hips and leg length differences and problems with shoulders, problems with hands, all those things that people normally complain about when they ride a bike. Oh, it hurts my shoulders, hurts my hands, hurts my neck. But how to resolve all that, but it involved more of a knowledge of anatomy and physiology, not only the muscles and bones, but how everything works together. So I was coming in with that kind of background. And then I thought, you know what it's like a long time ago, and we were discussing this earlier in the day, when I was a police officer in New Berlin, Wisconsin, which is basically a suburb of Milwaukee. I began going to a Taekwondo class, and it was taught actually by Four Winds Martial Arts, Thomas Sippen. I had really gotten into that, and as I told you earlier, the way that our belt ranking system went, red belt was right beneath black. So I had tested and had gotten my red belt, and of course the next step was testing for black belt. And that's when we were going, myself and not Mr. Sippen, but another black belt instructor, decided that we should go full contact in training for the black belt. And he said, "You're ready." And of course, he tired me out, and I didn't get my elbow down in time, and he got a side kick in and broke my rib, and we kept going. And at 3 a.m., I was in the emergency room in the hospital because I couldn't breathe. But I mean, that was my background. So going back to so what was in my mind is that, and I may be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. But when you get seriously into martial arts and you make your way up, you're not there when you get to black belt, because you have to work on the mind.
Yes, sir.
And that's so it's almost as if it's starting all over again. This is interior work. This is something. It was so much easier to do the physical stuff. Now I got to do this stuff that's going on in my head. How do I get myself to quiet down? How do I get myself to basically be calm in the face of adversity, as they say? But so along comes another yoga teacher, and she was your teacher, Mary Hilliker. And here I am 60, at that point, I'm 67 years old. So I meet Mary for breakfast or for coffee. And I said, "Am I too old to teach yoga?" And she said, "No." She said, "We need more male teachers in yoga, and especially older teachers who understand the needs of people as they age. because more and more people are getting into yoga as they grow older.
Mm-hmm.
But they're coming along with a host of problems. Shoulders, our shoulders generally, I had heard one physical therapist say, our shoulders are shot by the time we're 60. And that's not true for all of us, but for so many of us, because the arm is an appendage, and the things that we do with our arms, that we think we can do with our arms, all of that affects this joint.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we start out with a shoulder problem. We start out because I shouldn't say we, because I was young and stupid. I was always
Count me in.
lifting. I was always lifting more than I should. And, so anyway, so I'm getting into all this, and I'm I've got little aches and pains in here and there. But Mary says, no, you should start with us. We're going to start a class in another month or something like that. So I got into yoga teacher training, and that's what I did, the 200-hour teacher training class. And it wasn't, I called them some of the big box training schools, and they put through 30, 40, 50 people at a time, and
Mm-hmm.
they send them out all over. So Mary was teaching a lineage that I had never heard of called Vini Yoga.
Yeah.
But she put me in touch with the person whom she had learned from, Gary Kraftsau. Gary Kraftsau had spent about 6 years in India studying under Desikachar. Desikachar's father was Krishnamacharya. Krishnamacharya was the one who spent several years in a cave in northern India working. He walked 200 miles to be with this person. This person was his guru. This person was his teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And this person was called a householder. So he lived with his wife and his 2 children in the cave, and he farmed on the mountainside. He had terraced mountain plots and so forth. And so Krishnamacharya's job, while he received training in yoga, was also to help with the farming. But the catch is that when you are taught like that, your teacher doesn't ask you, but your teacher tells you what you will do upon leaving. Mm-hmm. So the teacher said, you're going to go teach yoga, and you're going to start an ashram. And Krishnamacharya says, I can't do that. I'm a Brahmin, and Brahmins are, we're above all that. We're not teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And his teacher said, no, you don't understand. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, this is what you're going to do. And so he had made that commitment. So that's what he did. But yoga really, the postures, as you know, are about this much of this huge picture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is what we call interior work. So chanting, meditation, breath, pranayama. So learning how the breath affects the nervous system. So, and Jamie, you went through some of this. So one of the things is that we use certain postures along with certain breath practices to create energy, to be more energizing. And we use other postures with a different breath practice with more of a connection to exhalation to affect the parasympathetic nervous system to create a relaxation response. So, for example, typically, if we were to do a yoga practice in the morning and we're trying to energize, trying to wake up, we're going to focus a little bit more on maybe after some warming up, on some back bending and some strength, more yoga postures more associated with strength. But we're also going to do that with more of an emphasis on inhalation. But the key, and one of the things that needs to be avoided, is that you never make your inhalation longer than the exhalation.
Why is that?
Never make because if you have a longer inhalation, it's going to throw your nervous system into disorder. That's when you see people with who are going through panic attacks and so forth, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't breathe. So what I did to put the bag over and get them
Yeah.
to calm down. And then the question is, well, how can you increase your breath capacity if you can't inhale longer than you exhale? And the answer is by pausing your breath at the end of the inhale. And it's not like you're going, it's not like that. It's more inhale, long inhale, and then a count pause. So it could be if I do let's say an 8 count inhale, I might do a 4 count pause at the end of the inhale. Then an exhale. So the idea is that you don't have a longer inhale than exhale. You just tack on the pause at the end of the inhale.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can do the same with exhalation. You can pause at the end of exhalation. But some people find, if you find that you're inhaling is not a scary thing. If you're inhaling, you're thinking, yeah, I'm taking air in, I'm alive.
Mm-hmm.
But when you exhale, and after you've let all your air out and you pause, you think, ooh, I'm going to have to inhale pretty soon here. This is a little scary. And for some people, it's a little scarier than taking a long inhale. But the more you do it, and what you're doing in the process as you begin focusing on, for example, if you're going into a posture, and I'm trying to think of a posture that people might be familiar with who are watching,
Mm-hmm.
Child's pose.
Yes.
Child's pose, you're on your hands and knees. So as you're on your hands and knees, you're inhaling, and then you exhale. And as you exhale, you slowly go back into child's pose while you're exhaling, not before, not after, but while. And so you start out slowly. So you slowly go back into child's pose as you slowly let your breath out. And some people say, well, my breath, it's like a balloon. If you release the balloon, the air just comes out all over. So how do I valve my breath? How do I valve my exhale? And that's where you get into such things as just pursing your lips, and just as if you're letting air out a little bit at a time out of a balloon,
That makes
or
sense.
you kind of pull your jaw in a little bit, and what that does is mildly constricts the throat and the airway. But there are a lot of different ways of doing it. But the point is that with the breath practice in combination with the physical practice, that gets you set up for going into your head because it has a calming effect. So you get things calmed down, and after things are calm, after you found relative calm in your head, then it's kind of I'm trying to think of some of the analogies that I've heard. One is thoughts are a natural process of our minds. I mean, that's what they're there for. We think.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you shut thoughts down? So we've already prepped using a breath practice, so focusing on longer exhalation to get us calmed down, and using postures toward the end of a practice at least that calm us, help us to calm along with the breath practice. So then we might want to come into a sitting position for meditation. So as you sit there, you think, oh, geez, I got these thoughts now. So how do I get rid of the thoughts? You let them go. Easier said than done.
Yes, sir.
So imagine that your mind is this pool of water with sediment. So you think, I got to stop my thoughts, and so we put our hand in the pond with all the sediment, and we're trying to get it to calm down, and all we do is stir it up even more. So that's what happens when you think, okay, I gotta attack this thought, I gotta attack that thought, and so forth. Instead, let the pond calm. And as the pond calms, the sediment floats to the bottom and the pond becomes clear. Your mind is very much the same. So if you sit and you begin to sit in meditation, and in meditation, you don't just sit and say, okay, I'm going to clear my mind, empty mind. It's good to focus on an object, and it's good to have a mantra. So the classic object, thousands of years, literally thousands of years old, is to focus on your breath. So here we go back to the breath again. So you're sitting there and you've got your eyes may be downcast, closed, or open but downcast, and you focus on inhalation and then exhalation. And training the mind is like training a puppy. So you don't get upset if you keep going back to thoughts. You just say, okay, I got to go back. Inhalation and exhalation. And then, if you'd like, you can take it a step further. So I inhale, and then I exhale. So there's a pause between inhalation, exhalation, and another pause between exhalation and inhalation. So the trick is, okay, which one is longer? Which pause? Inhale to exhale, or exhale to inhale. So you start focusing on that, and because you're focused on it, all the other stuff goes off to the side. You focus and you focus and you focus. Some people like to focus on a candle.
Yeah.
Some people like to, will find got the trees in the background and sun hasn't gone down yet. And there's a little pond back there, kind of stagnant, but there's a little pond. Some person could sit at the edge of the pond and look at one particular flower on the edge of the pond. And you focus on that. And after a while, you become a part of what you're looking at and not separate from. So now you're starting to get into getting things calm up here. You're becoming so focused that all thought goes off to the side. There was a Zen Buddhist monk, Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. It's either he or his son, wrote a book called something like Beginner's Mind, Empty Mind. Beginner's Mind, Empty Mind. So I'm still talking about yoga, believe it or not. I'm talking about all this headspace stuff, but it's more authentic yoga. And remember, I talked a while ago about, okay, if I made it up through the ranks to black belt, and then I was going to have to keep going, because that's where you start getting into the stuff that's going on in your thoughts, and your behavior. So here I am, fast forward, I'm now in yoga, but I've still got this stuff in my background from martial arts training. And I'm thinking, boy, I wish I would have known this 40 years ago or 30 years ago. But
isn't that the rub?
Pardon me?
I said, isn't that the rub, Bill? I wish I would have known this earlier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So as the idea of empty mind, beginner's mind, the more we sit in meditation, and you don't have to just sit, there are other ways of doing it, but the more you get into it, you realize, we all have a persona. And, it started when we were kids. We went to see a Superman movie and we walked out of there and just, hey, I'd love to have a cape. I'd love to be Superman. I'm going to, the next time there's a fight on the school ground, I'm going to break it up and I'm going to
emulate Superman, or some other hero.
So basically, we're trying to take on a persona. We go out and buy nice clothes so we look nice. We're putting on a persona, but that's not who we really are. So many of us, and it's part of Western thought. We're really, as Westerners, we're really pretty shallow
I think
compared
that's definitely true.
when you compare Eastern thought, classical or traditional Eastern thought, with traditional Western thought. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But we've taken on this persona, and of course, if you're, and it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Buddhist, or atheist. A good Christian, the one of the things that you want to do is find out who your true self is. If you're a good Buddhist, you want to find out, who am I really? Atheist, I want to find out who I am really. So that means you have to cut, when you think about growing up and all these things that influenced you and made you who you thought you were.
And essentially, those are the things that are not us.
Correct. They fooled us. We thought we were this person, or we thought we were that person. So the more you get into meditation, the more you recognize basically it's all extraneous crap. And you learn how to unload it. And then as you unload it, you begin to feel, generally you begin to feel happier, because you're finding out, pardon my French, but you may find out, I'm not the asshole that I thought I was. I'm really, I try to hide it. I try to act like the tough guy. I try to act, I adapt to a kind of a swagger when I walk, and my language is terrible because I'm always talking down to people, because I think that's part of my persona. But, I'm going to just go off the track here for a minute. We had breakfast with a friend the other morning, and she asked to borrow a couple of books that I have mentioned in the past. I said, what are you interested in them for? And she said, I want to become a better person. And and she said, you're not going to be around much longer. And I'm not. So I want to read, find me something that I can read that can steer me into being a better person. So in Christianity, and Jamie, I know I'm going all over the place here.
I'm following you every step of the way, Bill.
In Christianity, it's not the 10 Commandments that really help us to become good people. It's the Sermon on the Mount, the 8 Beatitudes. So the 10 Commandments are thou shalt not, things you shouldn't do. The Beatitudes get into blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's just one example. If you work hard at being a good person, caring about others, care more about others, a little less about yourself. In Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths, there's suffering, and we all suffer. And one of our big responsibilities is to reduce or eliminate suffering. So we not only reduce or eliminate our own suffering, but we reduce or eliminate the suffering of others. And the way that we do that, we get into the Eightfold Process, and you get into right speech, right thought, right action, right behavior, things like that. So right speech, don't talk down to people, don't right action, don't hurt, harm, ahimsa, non-harm. It's real important, and you can hurt people by your speech, you can hurt people by your behavior.
Definitely.
But the bottom line is, don't go out there and try to hurt other people, intentionally or unintentionally. And some people say, I didn't intend to do it, but I need to practice. And that's basically, so going back to this person that we had breakfast with, I said, you have to practice being better. So one of the things that helps is to pull back, sit down, calm your mind, and basically go over everything that you were thinking about. You were thinking, geez, I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to be a good person because I keep screwing up. But again, it's like a puppy. Look, you go back to the drawing board, you sit down, calm yourself, and start over again. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's the classic is getting cut off on the expressway. And you can, so after 2 months of meditation, compare your reaction 2 months later. And is there a difference? And if there's a difference, it doesn't matter if it's big or small, but if there's a difference, you're learning. So where does that leave us, Jamie?
That leaves us.
I think, so I've gone basically from the physical to the spiritual, and spiritual is not.
Yes.
Spirituality is not religion. Spirituality is kind of an innate belief system. There is this, and I wrote about it. I do this Caring Bridge post that's, by the way, is free. If you log on to Caring Bridge, you can read my post. But every time I go in for a treatment, I write a blog. I write a post.
Yeah.
And but the one that I wrote about most recently, and it's basically the difference between Eastern and Western thought. Westerners tend to view our lives, things that go on around us, in a very linear fashion. We're born, we live for a while, and then we die. Case closed. We buy a refrigerator, it runs for a while, and then it quits.
Mm-hmm.
Go in the dump, buy another one. So life starts all over again. So it's very linear. There is a book that a friend recommended. It's an old book. It's called The Snow Leopard, or In Search of the Snow Leopard. And it's a guy who, Peter Matheson, who, and he died several years ago, but he goes on a trek in the Himalayan mountains. His friend is looking for a rare form of sheep, and they're also looking for this, the leopard, the snow leopard, which is very rare. And this is back in the 70s that they're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Peter Matheson, when he wrote this, his wife had died from cancer the year before. So he's processing a lot. So his friend, his buddy, is looking for the snow leopard and for this rare form of sheep. And Peter's going along just to see if he can find some more meaning. My wife has died. Am I the same? How do I process her death? How do I keep going? And he's got some pretty serious stuff going on in his head. The other thing about Matheson, he's a practicing Zen Buddhist. Matter of fact, I think he was trained as a monk. So as he's walking along and he's talking about things that, and then they go into ice fields, they have problems with continual rain, the porters take off, people get sick, things like that. He's trying to resolve it with this whole idea of suffering, and how do I reduce my own suffering? And so I'm reading it, and it's really helping me. And I don't want to say
You can say anything
that
you
I
want, though.
suffer.
Yeah.
It's maybe I suffer a little bit from the cancer, but not a lot, not comparatively speaking. One of the things that helped me when I was diagnosed 3 years ago is I had a meditation practice already. So when Susie, my wife, when she and I met with the oncologist and he gave us the bad news, he said, "You have 2 years to live. You have pancreatic cancer." That was 3 years ago, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You said 2, but I'm going to stretch it out a little bit more. Susie was upset, obviously. She was crying, and I remember we had left the hospital at about 5:30. Everybody had gone home.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked across the parking lot. Parking lot is pretty empty at that point. And she's crying. She's got her head on my shoulder and she's crying. I was calm. I thought, okay. maybe if this is going to happen to somebody, maybe it's all right that it happened to me. Maybe I can deal with this better than somebody else. So it might as well happen to me rather than somebody else. And I'm not angry. I'm not afraid. And that surprised me. I just thought, okay, I'll do what the doctor tells me to do. I've got 2 years. 2 years is better than one, and definitely better than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that the doctor said, he said, continue to live your life the way that you have been living it as much as possible. Nothing really changes at this point. So I continued teaching yoga. I was going in for chemo once every other week. And, it was messing me up a little bit, but not a lot. But I guess the point is that I didn't feel that I was suffering. I felt that this is something that I can handle. This is something that is not beyond me. It's kind of hard to explain, but going back to the general idea of how we get into this trap, we Westerners, of suffering. It's like you start here and you end here. So you want to pack in as much as you can in this middle section, and then you keel over, and you're going. And you may go to heaven, you may go to hell if you believe in heaven and hell. And there are differences of opinion. It could be that I'm living my heaven or my hell right now.
Yeah.
But we don't know. But the point is, and Westerners especially tend to be much more afraid of death and dying. So there's this ongoing need to look young, to find miracle cures. People are always going online, and one person said, if you want to get rid of your cancer, you need to go to Fleet Farm and pick up their dog dewormer and start taking that, and that'll cure your cancer. Where are people? But people are grasping for anything to live a little longer. It's nice to be alive. I don't know if I told you, I was in hospice for 10 days.
Yeah, I knew. I knew. Susie had told me, and then I went to go teach class one day, and Ralph told me that you were up and at 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was passing out,
Mm-hmm.
and I had lost my appetite. So the second time I passed out, did a face plant.
Yeah.
And I showed you those pictures earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Went to the ER, and the ER doc said, you're a candidate for hospice. We can't really do anything for you. And he gave me the phone number. And I wavered because I need to talk to the oncologist first. But and then I passed out again at home, and one of our children who was visiting said, Dad, you got to take this seriously. You need to call hospice.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. I couldn't eat. And the role of hospice is not to make you eat, it's to help you die comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still passing out. And I thought, this is it. And then I was sitting with a group of friends one day on a warm day, sitting out front. And so they were talking about my situation. And then it just dawned on me, the one thing that really bothered me is that I had not touched base with my oncologist. I had never talked to him to see if this was the right move. And I told Susie later, I said, I need to talk to the oncologist.
Yeah.
So Susie made a phone call or two, and all of a sudden, in a day and a half later, I'm sitting in the exam room with the oncologist, and he said, Mr. Miller, you are not ready to die yet. And he said, you did not listen to me. And I didn't. He had put me on basically what amounts to a double dose of chemo, and I said, I can handle this. Mr. Tough, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But so he said, fine, if you think you can, do it. But you call the on-call nurse if things start to go bad. I said, yes, I will. I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, well, what happened is one weekend, and Susie and I continued to go biking on Saturdays in the warm weather, and we went for a bike ride, and I noticed things weren't right. And when we got back, I had absolutely no appetite. I mean, it was, when I looked at food, it nauseated me.
Ugh.
It was that bad. So Sunday, I tried to eat a little cereal and I ate a little piece of pizza or something like that. Monday morning, I got up, went downstairs to do some strength training, just, little basic stuff. Came upstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and I was getting some cereal. And boom, down I went. I mean, I passed out, fell off the chair, did a face plant. And the next thing I know, Susie's yelling my name and pushing on my back, trying to stimulate me. And I'm lying there in a pool of blood. And she's got the phone and she's calling 911 and she's describing my condition. And I'm thinking, it's so comfortable right here. Why can't they just clean this, put this blood under me? But I was so relaxed. And so they took, I went into the emergency room and they kept me overnight. They thought it was something wrong with my heart. And if you've ever been in the intensive care unit, you don't sleep. They wake you up all night long to do tests and to make sure you're doing and check the monitors, all that. So I went through all that. The cardiologist came in the next morning and said, your heart's fine, you can go home. 2 days later, I passed out again. I was riding with Susie. She wouldn't let me drive at that point. I was in the passenger seat. She was just running some errands. And I passed out. So we ended up back at the emergency room. And that's when the doctor said, you need to go into hospice. So I went into hospice. We called the company. Nurse came over. They brought over a wheelchair, a walker, and a stool for me to sit on in the bathtub. And then one of my sons, put in one of those shower heads that you can detach. And one of the son-in-law put in a big bar, a grab bar. And basically I was dying. I had lost weight. I was freezing all the time. I was always covered up in blankets or I had jackets on and it was 80 degrees out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm ready to die. I'm preparing to die. And there was this lingering thought. And I thought, Bill, you are such a jerk because you never contacted your oncologist. And he needs to know because he put almost at that point, he put almost 3 years of hard work into me and trying to, and here I am, I bailed on him without even telling him. Well, and that, I can't.
Yeah. I understand. I don't know that I wouldn't have done the same thing in that situation. There's just so much to think of.
Yeah. But I couldn't leave that undone.
Yeah,
so I had to fix it. I had to talk to him and I wanted to at least apologize to him. And I said, and I did. So Susie got the appointment. We went to the appointment and I said, and his name is Dr. Anatila. I said, Dr. Anatila, I disrespected you. I told you I was going to do what you told me to do and I didn't. And I apologize for that. And I thought, if he says I'm not treating you anymore, fine. But at least I said what I felt I had to say.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a setup. He knew he wanted me back. I mean, I'm kind of, in a way, for him, I think I'm kind of I'm a medical anomaly. A lot of people in the medical community can't understand how I've been able to continue living with pancreatic cancer as well as I have. I'm continue to be active, to walk, ride the bike, We did a little snowshoeing last winter, stuff like that. And I still do a little bit of strength training 3 days a week. It's always Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, ingrained in my head. But I'm getting off track here a little bit. I was talking about Eastern and Western thought, and so basically, this whole idea of non-harm and right speech, right behavior, that played into me. I have to no two ways about it. I have to talk to Dr. Anatilo and apologize. It's it's not the same as a recovering alcoholic making amends, but it's somewhat in that same vein.
Yeah.
This is something that I have to do. I have to do it. Mm-hmm. And I have to apologize to those others, the nurses, the oncology nurses who spent so much time trying to help. And then I hear, what do? I bail on them and with no explanation. So we meet with Dr. Anatilo and you know, I apologize and so forth. He says, okay. I said, and he says, you got to sever ties with hospice, which we did immediately. And so I'm thinking, okay, now he's going to send us home. He says, Mr. Miller, now I want you to go downstairs and have your labs done. So I went downstairs and they drew blood. And he said, I want to see just how deficient you are. He said, looking at you, you're dry. And so I came back upstairs into the cancer center, and they've got these suites where they do the, you know, with a chair that reclines back and another chair for a visitor and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I went into one, and there's one of the oncology nurses. Her name is Deb, and she's waiting there, door open, big smile on her face, and very happy to see me. And I was very happy to see her. I was in tears. No. I could not hold back my tears. Wow. I was back in the fold. Mm-hmm. I was going to live, and I was with good friends, people who really cared. So Deb, I had 3, you know, they hang the bags on the hook next to them, mm-hmm. and I've got a port, so they go right into the port. I had 3 bags of fluids right off the bat, of electrolytes and all sorts of stuff, potassium, magnesium, all these things that I was deficient in as I was dying, mm-hmm. basically. So I went back 2 days later and had a couple more bags. And then I went back a third time. And I did the blood, did the labs, drew the blood, and I was pretty much up to normal. It's like I got a full gas tank again. And I will never forget. Susie and I had gone in, and I'm in for another infusion, so I always meet with Dr. Anatilo first. Dr. Anatilo is a big Nigerian. He's a big man. And he's, being from Nigeria, of course, he has an accent, so mm-hmm. I have to listen closely to what he has to say sometimes. But he's a man of few words. One of the nurses told me a long time ago, and he's regarded as pretty much a genius. The nurse said, I'm convinced that he has 2 brains. One brain sleeps at night while the other works. And my complaint to the nurse was, I don't think he knows my name. And she said, you're right. He doesn't know your name, but he knows your numbers. And he's got your numbers in his head, and he's constantly thinking about, what can I do to make Bill better? So Dr. Anatilo, man of few words. So we go in, and this is a week after all this other stuff has happened, and I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm sitting there in the exam room waiting for him to come in. Susie's next to me. He came in, and he looked, because he always looks first to see color, see how we look. And he starts laughing uncontrollably. Really? I thought he was going to start jumping up and down. He said, look at you, look at you. You are so, he said, you look so good. And he was so happy. It wasn't like, yeah, I did that. He was just so happy
Yeah.
that I was doing okay. It was really something else to see him animated like that. But going back into this whole idea of where's my mind when all this stuff is going on? I'm getting ready to die. And this is where I think to an extent martial arts comes in when you really get serious about it. Why am I doing this? What's beyond?
Beyond the surface.
And I talked about, pardon me?
Like beyond the surface?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes way beyond. But this whole idea, I was talking about linear thought, Western thought.
Mm-hmm.
We're born, we live, we die. Eastern thought, and this goes back to this book that I was reading. I'm tying it all together now, or trying to, In Search of the Snow Leopard. Peter Matheson makes the comment that in Eastern thought, first of all, if you look up at the heavens late at night, the stars are out, the galaxies,
Yeah.
and you see movement throughout. It's not, you occasionally see a shooting star that's making a straight line, or maybe a random, what do you call it?
UFO sighting?
Shoot up. Pardon me?
A random UFO sighting?
Yeah, even that. But anyway,
I just couldn't help it. Yeah.
other than that, everything is in motion, and a lot of it is circular motion.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the Earth, and we think about all the parts of the galaxies. Things are in constant motion. There is no beginning and no end. There is no beginning and no end. And there is no end. So one of the things that I talked about in this last post that I had written is that I practice, one of my practices is to sit. And I'm surrounded by objects and chairs, table, couch, something like that. And they're temporary, and I'm temporary. They don't exist in perpetuity. We cut down a tree, we make furniture, so forth. They're temporary, but they're also not temporary because they go someplace. Even after we smash the furniture and burn it, it doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
It becomes ash, becomes part of the land. But when we get into this idea of circular, the idea, and again, this is Buddhist thought, there is no beginning and there is no end. So when I die, when my body dies, my essence lives. And my essence is how I touch all those other people that I came into contact with in my life, because they take a part of me and they keep the cycle going. It doesn't end. So I don't really end. My body ends, but not my true self. Does that make sense?
That makes
My
total
true
sense.
self. So if we get stuck on, I'm going to die, my body's going to die, and that's it, in a way, it's kind of selfish.
I could see that.
Because we're saying to ourselves, the world is just not going to be the same without me. Once I'm out of the picture, we got all these thoughts, and I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that, and I don't want to go through this process of dying. And well, I already started the process of dying. I know what it's like. It's not so bad. But again, what pulled me out of it was I got to apologize to this guy first, and the guy said, "You're not ready to go yet. Get over it." But when it starts again, I have to remind myself, and I think I've gotten to the point where I don't have to remind myself anymore. I'm not really going to die. My body's going to die. But it's more important than ever before. And this is where right speech, right behavior comes in, and love for others, and love versus hate versus fear, love for others. Sermon on the Mount. It's important for me to love rather than fear or rather than hate.
Yeah.
That keeps, so that's all part of that cyclical process. I, in turn, if I have that perspective, that rubs off on others. And that way, they are more likely to be influenced in a good way by me rather than a bad way. So as we go spinning out into the multiple universes, things are better. I mean, I've done my little bit to make things better. You know, the one thing that keeps coming up, and this is in Buddhist thought, and I've seen it in Christian thought too.
Yeah.
This idea of ripples on the water. Looking, if you ever go out to the ocean, or if you're sitting at a lake, and each wave is separate. Each wave that comes in is a separate wave, and yet they're all part of the same body of water. So we Westerners tend to set ourselves up as, yeah, I'm a unique wave. I'm an independent wave.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We are nothing without others around us. We're interdependent beings, and how we behave with others ultimately affects others. So we're just one minuscule wave among all these other waves in this huge pond. And it's, so we can't really extract ourselves and say, as we would like to, I'm this unique person with this unique persona. And we pat ourselves on the back. Yeah, I'm different. And we're really not, and we are so dependent on each other. And it's so much, to me, it's so much more important. And I never would have said this at one time, but I say it now. Love really, when you do, I want to grow up in an environment of fear and hate. Does that make me a better person? Or if I grow up in an atmosphere of love, does that make me a better person? Who would other people, would they rather see me hateful, or would they rather see this loving person who's willing to help others, to lower their suffering, reduce their suffering, and make them better, so that this whole expansive lake that we're in, so that everybody's better. All the waves are not separate. All the waves are all interrelated. They're all part of the same. And when we get into, and then you multiply this, or you expand your lens and you're looking at the universe, and here's this tiny, tiny speck named Bill. But Bill is not by himself. He's not an individual unique among others. He's just all of these people that are floating around in this circular. And it's not just humans, it's our whole environment. Have we made things better, or have we made things worse? This is so Jamie, it gets a little heady, but
I love it.
you know, there are authors, and a lot of authors talk about this. And again, going into the difference between Westerners and Easterners. There's an author, he's a Franciscan priest, Richard Rohr, and he writes about this.
Breathing underwater.
But Richard Rohr talks about the 3 stages. And so we grow up, we're children, we're adolescents, we're teenagers, and we spend most of our time in front of the mirror and making sure that we look right, and we're popping pimples and everything else. And then we get into our not middle age, but moving into middle age, where we want to be a success. We want to have a nice car. We want to have a nice house. We want to have a steady job. We want to have insurance, maybe kids. We want to travel. And then we get into this later stage. And as you know, it's in yoga, it's called the sunset stage. Where we want to spend more time in thought and in prayer and in contemplation. There's something more to life than all this other stuff that I've been through. So that's where I am. Maybe a little late in the game, but very much so for probably the last 10, 15 years. And I think it was Taekwondo and I was having a discussion with one of the instructors one day. What's beyond black belt? He says, oh, Bill, there's so much more. Oh, geez, how am I ever going to get all this done? But here, and then along came what I call authentic yoga, which is more focused. If you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there's 199 sutras. Sutras are threads of thought, things that if you want to live a good life, here are 199 basic threads of thought that may help. So the second one, probably all the others are related to the second sutra. And the second sutra is that the purpose of yoga is to get rid of all the mind stuff. The purpose of yoga is not to exercise, not to stretch. The purpose of yoga is to clear your head of all the extraneous BS that doesn't matter and find out who you really are. And so all of this, when you really get into it, and when I would teach classes, and now I stopped teaching. Now I'm thinking about starting up again. But the idea is to help people reduce suffering, help them to see who they really are and get rid of all that stuff that, oh, I'm such a bad person because how many times have you heard this? My dad was in jail. My brothers, you probably heard of my brother, he was in prison. I've got, my parents are both drunks and on and on. So I'm fated just to have a bad life, and then I'm going to end up homeless on the street. And all that negative talk that goes on in our head. And so it's really important to clear that away and say, so you can say, I'm a good person. But because I'm a good person, there are certain things that I not only have an obligation to do, but I want to do. I want to help others, help them to become better, reduce suffering.
Yeah.
So you can really, when you get into this third stage of life and you begin to back off, cars aren't so important, houses aren't so important. If you come in and say, well, I just got a raise 10,000 a year and I'm making 105 something now, I don't care. Hit me with something that is more important.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to a younger person because they're still in that second stage. The problem that we have now, especially in Western society, is that we have people still in the second stage living into old age. They're still thinking about amassing wealth. They're still thinking about putting on a show.
Still winning.
Yes, and never have figured out. So their idea is to take or be taken. To take or I don't want to be an easy mark. I don't want somebody to try to screw me over. So never believe those people who say that love is the answer, because they're going to screw you. They're going to learn how to take advantage of you. And after a while, you have to say, I don't care what you think. I know this is the right way. And I'm going to go into that third period that Richard Rohr talks about, or that the whole point of yoga, getting into that point where we do the interior work. That's where I am. And the cancer has helped. Peter Matheson, the guy who wrote about the snow leopard, In Search of the Snow Leopard, alive. Before she died from cancer, she said, this is probably one of the happiest times of my life. How could she think that? because everyone thought she was suffering so much, and yet you learn to see beyond. Pain is a given, suffering is optional. Pain is a given, suffering is optional. We put it on ourselves. And she had figured out that the suffering was optional and that people truly cared. And I'm going through the same. I am, when I go into Caring Bridge, for example, I can see, and I never knew this until this morning, I figured it out. I've had something like 26,000 views of my posts.
Really?
But those are a lot of those are repeat, the same person. But when I look, the same people are going back and reading and rereading and rereading. And then I'm getting comments, and it's stuff that I'm coming up with because I'm still reading and I'm still thinking and I'm still figuring out where my place is in the universe. So I write about it, and I hope I'm not confusing people, but people read it and it's causing them to think more. Yeah, there's more to life than just going out and buying the best car or getting a nice house, all these other things. Yeah, health insurance is nice, but would the end of the world arrive if I didn't have health insurance? And you start to rethink some of these things. A friend of mine the other day said he was scared as hell. And I said, of what? He says, I'm afraid that our government is going to take all our savings. They're going to eliminate Social Security. They're going to take all our savings because AI is this big thing now. And because with AI, people won't work anymore. There will be no work. The idea is that the government is going to take give everyone a minimum salary to live off of so that they can buy the goods created by AI. And he said, what they're going to do, I mean, he's just going off with us, and he's going on and on about, I'm so afraid. And this is a person who's always got the news on. He's, breaking news. He's always, I got to turn the TV on. I stop whatever I'm doing. And I don't want to say a depressed person, but he's, if misery loves company, he's in there, and he tries not to be, but
it's hard to see. It's
I think
hard to see that.
sometimes
It's hard to see that when we're there sometimes.
yeah. And I said, I don't feel that way. He said, why not? And I said, I don't know. I'm still working on bikes, fixing up bikes for other people, bikes that are donated. I like to have conversations with people and steer them from depression to optimism, do little things for people. Bridge Street Mission, I think you're familiar with Bridge Street Mission, which is, and little things like I'd go through they have a drive-through coffee thing. And when I would go through the drive-through coffee thing, especially around Christmas time, I'd give the person behind the counter $100. What's this for? I said, this is a donation. And then in one case, the woman had her young daughter with her, and it's basically a trailer, this drive-through thing. So I gave her an extra 40, and she said, what's this for? And I said, I want you to take your daughter, do some shopping, and either go shopping or go to a really nice restaurant, and the two of you have a nice treat. But I feel good when I can do things like that, and the money is money out of my, what I call my sock drawer. I'm dying. I mean, I got nothing to spend it on, so it really feels good to be able to give the cash to somebody who can use it.
Yeah.
So going back to what my friend said, I said, I don't feel that way, because I feel that no matter what they do, they can't take away my freedom to help somebody else. And that is a joyful experience for me. So they can't take that away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes beyond this whole idea of whatever success is. Anyway,
I
I've done a
like.
lot of talking here.
Well, thank you. That's why I wanted to have you on the show. I really grasped on, and the idea of the wave really resonated with me. Especially how you talked about, well, what I took as spreading positive energy, and that positive energy is part of the wave. And that way, the wave might never dissipate if the energy keeps getting dispersed. And
Yeah, yeah.
and as I've
And
told,
we're all part.
we're all part of it.
We're all part of this. Yeah,
You have had this genuine smile through this entire interview, Bill, and we've talked about some
hmm.
really heavy things. And
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I'm sure I don't have many viewers, but I'm sure our viewers, they'll appreciate that too. We all go through things with our own lens, and what
yeah,
we're going
yeah,
through is our reality. And
yeah,
you spoke to us about trying to center ourselves, let things
hmm,
float to the bottom or float to the top and then fall to the bottom, and be
yeah,
okay with it. That
yeah,
that's really hard. Uh, and from that Western point of view, which is, if I'm not winning, I'm losing. Yeah,
yeah.
but
The
I'm I'm,
yeah,
I'm watching
but
you live
there's
it,
a
Bill, with this smile, and
yeah,
it's super inspiring.
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll try to keep it up.
Well, yeah, you you amaze us all, sir. Would you like to come back and talk to us again? And maybe we could talk a little bit about, I don't know, whatever it is you want to talk about, or teaching yoga if you decide to go back and teach a class.
I have an idea, um, and I ran it by Mary Hilliker, who was your teacher and my
Yeah.
teacher, and she thought it was pretty crazy in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, the first thing I thought of was the title of the class, and I'm going to call it Bill's Pretty Good Yoga. Bill's Pretty Good Yoga. And she said, why that? And I said, I don't want to create too many expectations, so I'll call it pretty good. But we all want to, I mean, if we get into yoga, we want to do it. We have this thing in our heads like, I got to be perfect and I got to look just like the pictures.
Yeah.
Nah, nah. That real yoga, you adapt to your needs. And so it ends up looking pretty good. But
Mm-hmm.
who cares? Because you're benefiting from it. So anyway, I was going to do a 4-class series or something like that. It's still on the drawing board, and then finding a time to teach it, and some of the other things, my treatments.
Yeah.
Things can, with me, the way things are now, things could go south in a hurry.
I know.
But right now, I'm feeling good. So, um, at least I can plan some of this stuff. And if I can't, if I'm not around so that I can teach it, I'll give it to somebody else. I'll give it to you.
Hmm. I will. I will do my best to do pretty good with that, Bill.
There
Whatever
you
you
go.
need me to do.
There you go.
I would.
We don't want to be perfect. We just want to be pretty good.
Yeah. And pretty good actually feels pretty good, and I don't know that I've ever felt perfect. So thanks for
Are you familiar with the term equanimity?
slightly.
It means it means that things are okay just the way they are. So you're not drawn to anything, and you're not angry or afraid of anything. So there is no desire. And one of the things that always gets us into trouble is desire.
Yeah.
So desire can even be hate. Somebody cuts you off and you have a desire to teach that person a lesson. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show him and I can't let them get away with it, all that kind of stuff. That's desire uh, related to hate. And then there's fear. And it scared the hell out of me when the guy cut me off. So fear, so anger is actually kind of a sub emotion, if you will, to fear. Anger is
Yeah.
based on fear. But when you reach a state of equanimity, things don't matter. You're not drawn. You're not desirous when a car commercial appears on the TV. It doesn't draw you.
Mm-hmm.
When you go by McDonald's, and McDonald's has done a lot of marketing on this, where can we locate stores and how can we do our ads to get people to eat even though they're not hungry? It's the convenience.
Yeah.
And how do we get sucked into the drive-through?
Or the candy right by the register. You don't even think about it, right? It's just I want. Ooh, why not?
Yeah. So when you get into a state of equanimity, that's what I'm working toward, but I'm not there yet. But the more often I can practice that, the better I feel. Because that's what gets us into trouble when you think about it, is desire. We want to be this person that we're not. And so it really reaching a state of equanimity is being perfectly happy with who you are and not focusing on yourself, but focusing much more on the needs of others. So,
And that's also the root of yoga, yes?
yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes when I talk with our students, I'll say, when we look at the yin yang, we see these two different things,
Yes.
But
Yeah.
what if it's a 50-50 and the line in the middle is what we're shooting for? But it's the thinnest part, so we spend the less time there.
Yeah. But anyway, it was good talking to you. And
Thank you.
if you asked me before what I could talk about, if there is another time, and I don't know, we'll see. Keep it open.
Let's keep it open. Let's keep the wave going, and then we'll see if something else comes up.
Good talking to you, Jamie.
Good talking to you, Bill. I really appreciate you coming on the show and all you've done for us. And honestly, I wouldn't be where I'm at if I hadn't come across you and Susie early in my time in Wausau. And I'm very thankful that I did. So
I'm very thankful that we both met you also, and I will not forget those days. You are, and you and I did a weekend retreat together.
Yeah, we did.
It was. I still think about that. So anyway, you're doing well.
So are you. You keep smiling. All right.
I will.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Jamie Sparling and Bill Miller with the FormABLE podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us this evening, and subscribe, all that stuff. Leave us a comment, and I think we're gonna have Bill back, and I think maybe leave some comment and we'll ask him a question. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jamie.